The first caravan of Salvadoran migrants has reached the Guatemala-Mexico border. Mexican authorities are allowing the group of about 2,000 onto the bridge at the border for processing. Migrants want to be processed swiftly so they can proceed as they are suffering from exhaustion and hunger. Some say Mexican authorities have offered them asylum, but they want to reach the United States.
They won't let us through, and the children are hungry. They cannot do this. They have to open the gates. Because we are a caravan of people, and children are going to dehydrate.
Mexican authorities are proposing giving us shelter, which we don't need because we want to reach the United States. We don't want to stay in Mexico. We want them to let us pass through the country. We don't plan to stay in Mexico.
But many members of the caravan have decided to cross the Suchiate River on their own. As was the case with previous caravans, they view authorities with suspicion and as a threat, trying to obstruct them. So they have chosen to bypass the slow immigration process to continue advancing. With 4 days to go until the midterm elections in the United States, President Donald Trump is warning that troops stationed at the Mexican border could shoot migrants who throw stones at them. Trump has been accused of using the migrant caravan to rally support ahead of the elections, where Democrats threatened to retake control of the lower house. The first group of the migrant caravan is still in southern Mexico, many hundreds of kilometers from the U.S. border.
They're throwing rocks viciously and violently. You saw that 3 days ago, really hurting the military. We're not going to put up with that. They want to throw rocks at our military fights back. We're going to consider it. I told them, consider it a rifle.
Some of the 50,000 troops promised by Trump have already begun deploying to the border. A number of former defense officials say that the president's instruction to shoot at stone throwers violates the Army's rules of engagement.
They stopped for 2 days. But early on Thursday, the first migrant caravan continued their journey. They plan to walk 47 kilometers to the Matias Romero area in the state of Oaxaca. On their way, they faced a number of police checkpoints that forced them to get out of cars that gave them a lift.
They told us to get off, that the car was overcrowded, but the car had a normal number of passengers. Nobody was hanging off it. We can barely walk anymore.
Part of the caravan tried to camp in the town's central park, but authorities didn't allow it. Non-government organizations have condemned threats made to those trying to help the migrants.
They are trying to cage us so that the caravan doesn't move forward. They don't want us to leave Oaxaca. Federal authorities have shown zero humanitarian concern.
Negotiations with authorities to provide transport for migrants failed. For now, they have to continue on their own, but this time in the state of Veracruz.
We are hoping to advance. The day is long and our kids are dehydrated. We don't know what to do. We have no food or water.
Oaxaca's Ombudsman Office has taken over the tasks to provide information about the rights migrants have on Mexican territory.
They have the right to receive sanitary and medical attention by state institutions. They even have the right to work, to hold temporary employment, to education, to receive aid from authorities.
The way to Mexico City is very long, and support for migrants seem non-existent. However, nothing seems to faze them in their goal of reaching the U.S. border. They want to claim asylum in a country with a government that has already heavily militarized its border to deter them without thinking about the consequences of the confrontation.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez is with the second caravan of Honduran migrants in the Mexican state of Chiapas.
The migrant caravan started out very early in the morning. They are now walking on the road between Huistla and Mapastepec in the state of Chiapas, a journey of approximately 57 kilometers. This is a long way. That's why they began so early. This is a more compact route because in the previous days, federal police arrested some migrants and they don't want this to happen again. The group plans to stop and sleep in Mapastepec as they keep heading north, following in the path of the first migrant caravan.
Thank you, Pablo, for that report. The Cuban president has met his Russian counterpart at the start of a 3-day state visit to Moscow. Vladimir Putin welcomed Miguel Díaz-Canel to Kremlin. They talk about strengthening economic ties. Trade between the two nations grew 17% last year. This is Díaz-Canel's first visit outside the Americas since he took office.
With this visit to the Russian Federation as President of Cuba, we are ratifying the continuity of the Cuban Revolution's relationship with Russia.
Our correspondent in Moscow, Hansel Oro, is following the Cuba president's visit.
The President of Cuba's Council of State, Miguel Díaz-Canel, has now met President Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin. Putin talked about the need to keep on deepening the strategic relationship between the two countries in various areas. He also talked about the deep friendship between the two peoples, which of course has a long history, and the need to help Cuba's industrialization. For his part, Díaz-Canel condemned the unilateral sanctions imposed on Russia by the United States, as well as NATO's encroachment on Russia's borders. Putin stressed the need to respect the self-determination of Cuba and other countries. A number of other Russian officials spoke specifically against the U.S. financial and economic blockade of Cuba. Yesterday, of course, the United Nations voted overwhelmingly against the blockade by 189 votes to 2, giving a resounding victory to Cuba and all those who support it. Díaz-Canel also met the leaders of the Russian Communist Party and delivered a message from Raul Castro. Another important issue here is the growth of Russian tourism to Cuba, with more than 100,000 Russian tourists currently visiting the island every year. Working groups between Russia and Cuba have already reached a number of agreements on metal production, oil and energy.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few. A strong earthquake has hit Chile, but no injuries have been reported. The 6.2 magnitude quake hit several regions in the north of the country. Landslides blocked roads in the city of Iquique. Structural damage to roads and buildings have been reported, but no one has been injured. Brazil's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro has once again said he will move Brazil's embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
If our capital is changed from Brasilia to Rio de Janeiro, what's the big deal? Other countries would simply bring their embassies here. I do not see what's wrong with moving our embassy to Jerusalem. It's not a life or death situation. We greatly respect Israel and the Arab people. Brazil is a peaceful country where everyone can live in peace.
Brazil's federal police are to investigate an alleged plot to derail investigations into the murder of Marielle Franco. The security minister told the media of the very serious accusations of irregularities in the case. The councilwoman, an LGBT activist, was shot dead in Rio de Janeiro in January, along with her driver.
The charges suggest the existence of a criminal organization involving public officers of various bodies, militia, criminal organizations, and the connivance to impede, to obstruct, to derail the investigation into the murder of Marielle Franco and Anderson Gomez.
Fighting between the National Liberation Army, ELN, and the Popular Liberation Army, EPL, is causing people to flee in mass in the Catatumbo region of Colombia. At least 60 families were displaced from their homes after fighting between both groups restarted on Thursday. Violent clashes have reportedly left at least 1 people dead and more injured. Authorities believe at least 50 civilians were caught in the crossfire. The International Criminal Court has defended the work of Colombia's special peace jurisdiction judges as they seek to implement the country's peace agreement.
International Criminal Court Deputy Prosecutor James Stewart has visited Colombia, where he supported the work the Special Peace Jurisdiction is doing to facilitate peace in the country. He also defended the autonomy of the committee, the work of magistrates, and rejected the attempts by political interests to give the military a special treatment.
Let judges do their job, support us in all aspects. The accountability is the only way to guarantee a sustainable and long peace.
The Attorney General of Colombia spoke about the topics the International Criminal Court is examining.
They are examining topics such as paramilitary, sexual and gender crimes, forced displacement, false positives, and the duties of a special peace jurisdiction.
Experts also analyzed the role of the National Court and the International Criminal Court in the investigations over international crimes through transitional justice. They also examined how the rights of victims can be protected.
We do not have a bias towards the FARC. We have been named as judges to protect the victims and to punish those responsible for these serious crimes. We do that by applying justice.
2 constitutional reforms have taken place to allow for the implementation of the peace agreement, also to proceed with the 40 normative reforms, which has been discussed in the Constitutional Court.
The legal framework for peace talked about the mechanism for prioritization. Also, the Legislative Act from 2017 incorporated a system of truth, justice, and repair.
Despite the support of the International Criminal Court for the special peace jurisdiction, the public prosecutor said it was going to allocate people and keep investigating crimes that happened before the peace agreement.
The mayor of Montevideo, Daniel Martinez, has visited workers from the gas union who have been on hunger strike for the last 17 days in Uruguay. The strike started when Montevideo's gas fired 21 workers as part of a company restructure that could lead to more layoffs.
Situations like this hunger strike will always awaken our solidarity. We have great concern over the uncertainty these workers are going through. Despite talks with the company and attempts by the government to intervene, the situation is not changing. Still, we will do what we can to help.
It's been 15 months since the disappearance and death of Santiago Maldonado in the province of Chubut in Argentina. The documentary about him, called Santiago's Way, has screened at the National University of La Plata 100 times.
15 months have passed since Santiago Maldonado disappeared, an incident that's etched in the hearts of Argentines. And that's reflected in the documentary Santiago's Way.
There are difficult times for Argentina and for Latin America. We need to come together and share our culture. We have used cinema as our canvas to raise this topic, to tell Santiago's story, a story that remains an open wound for Argentinian society.
A whole crew came together to tell a story that's full of unanswered questions. The documentary's popularity has surprised those who made it. The film is in opposition to the mainstream media, who haven't been clear about the motives behind Santiago's death.
There is no doubt Santiago's case amounts to a forced disappearance that happened under Mauricio Macri's government. The mainstream media's reporting has been highly doubtful. They continue to say to this day that Santiago Maldonado drowned.
Over 40,000 people have watched the documentary across 100 screenings in movie theaters, trade unions, and universities. The interest led to a conversation about the 49-day disappearance and death from this artisan from the Mapuche community, who suffered from police repression.
This is an important artistic expression. It's a major work of investigative journalism that condemns the ongoing crimes of the government. It points a finger at government impunity in the case of Santiago Maldonado.
This was a forced disappearance. This tragedy won't remain as a question mark with no answer. It uncovers the type of regime we live under.
The hegemonic media and their journalists have become facilitators for these crimes. This was a political killing.
Human rights organizations and social movements hold Mauricio Macri's government responsible for the death of Santiago Maldonado. In a country that has seen over 30,000 people disappear, Santiago's Way leaves many unanswered questions.
The Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency has donated computers and $70,000 to the Turks and Caicos Islands, this in the wake of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. 88 laptops were presented to the Ministry of Education. The monetary donation will contribute towards the development of the Education Management Information System. The donation is part of the Legacy project aiming to improve the conditions of the most vulnerable people in the most badly affected areas. Guyana's president is in Cuba for 2 weeks of a series of medical tests. Despite having received a clean bill of health back in May, he started experiencing symptoms which forced him to get a second checkup.
At that time, they discovered some symptoms which needed further investigation. So I just agreed with that diagnosis and made arrangements to go to Cuba for further investigations. At this time, there is no clear indication of disorder or what the nature of the disorder is. It's a question of investigation. And I think I can get the best advice in Cuba.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. The Trump administration has announced that it is reinstating all sanctions on Iran that were removed under the 2015 deal with the Obama administration. The sanctions will take effect on the 5th of November and will cover Iran's shipping, financial, and energy sectors. Meanwhile, France, Germany, Britain, and the European Union have condemned the move. An Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has claimed 180 lives, with 10 more reported deaths in recent days. The Ministry of Health has said it has recorded 285 possible cases. The latest outbreak is spreading in the region of North Kivu, which is home to dozens of rebel groups, making it difficult for health authorities to control it. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has launched a specialized police unit to tackle gang violence in Cape Town neighborhoods. The anti-gang unit aims to displace and weaken the power of violent gangs in the country. In September, thousands of Cape Town residents took to the streets to protest against gang violence in their neighborhoods.
But today, our communities working in partnership with the South African Police Service are declaring that today they are taking back their streets. Today we say the streets of Hanover Park no longer belong to the gangsters, they belong to the people of Hanover Park.
The government of South Sudan has released 2 associates of the main rebel chief in order to advance a peace deal. President Salva Kiir ordered the release of a retired colonel and an advisor to Riek Machar. The peace deal is meant to put an end to almost 5 years of civil war. Now let's take a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
3 recent leaders of Madagascar are running for president in next week's election. The candidates have been out campaigning ahead of the first round of the presidential election on November 7th. Spanish public prosecutors are seeking jail sentences of up to 25 years for the 9 leaders of the Catalan independence movement. They accuse the leaders of rebellion and the misuse of public funds in the failed secession bid of October last year. Thousands of Congolese people have been expelled from Angola and are now stuck at the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Red Cross says they are struggling to get by with nothing, and the UN warns of serious human rights abuses. Over 300,000 Congolese citizens have been expelled from Angola. Many of them were working in the country's mines.
When I arrived at the border, I didn't have any money, so I had to sell my sleeping mat for 10,000 francs.
We are really suffering here in Cameco. People are sleeping outside or in churches. Children are out in the rain.
A fistfight in a bus may have caused the death of 13 people in China. A brawl between a passenger and the driver apparently caused the bus to plunge from a bridge into a river in the southwest of the country. 13 bodies were rescued from the water, but 2 remain missing. There were 15 people on board.
At 118 years old, a Bolivian man and woman may be the oldest people alive. Zenon Vilca Flores was born on August 21, 1900. Could be the oldest male ever to have lived. His compatriot, Julia Flores Colque, was born on October 26, 1900, celebrated her 118th birthday at a party that was organized by the municipality of Sacaba. Mama Julia, as she is fondly known, is reportedly in good health. And we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.